Yeah, you're going to want to buckle up for today's program. Welcome in January 21st, 2024. 2025, excuse me. I took us back in time. That's how the Suns have me all messed up today. Welcome in to today's edition of The Lunch Break. Chris Schubert with you for the next 2 hours. KDUS AM 1060, always on the KDUS AM 1060 app. You can also catch the show live video form on the KDUS AM 1060 YouTube channel. We are in the year 2025, and it feels very similarly to 2024 when it comes to one specific basketball team. And in front of me is the show rundown. And I'm just going to count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 8 segments in the show. 5 of them associated with one specific team here in town. And if you could just take a small guess where you think we're starting today's show.
Time for our top story of the day. It's the Daily Special.
118 to 92. That was the score yesterday for the Suns in their no-show against the best team in the Eastern Conference. A no-show. That's what the Phoenix Suns were yesterday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Donovan Mitchell leads the way with 33 for the Cavs, and this was a non-competitive contest. Not even remotely close. And I think this is the first time in the history of the show that we are doing this. The first time in the history of the lunch break. Now, it's a short history. We've only been at this a couple of months, but when you do something historic, we have to make note of it. The first time in the show history that we are doing this. But I am going to play something for you that I said on yesterday's program. This is what I said to all of you yesterday. Now, I got a lot of cuts to get through here today on the show, so let's hope I hit the right button here. But this is how we ended our Suns conversation yesterday looking at this specific basketball game. What did we want to see? What did we want to learn yesterday from the Phoenix Suns? So, with all 3 members of the Big Three, with Nick Richards in the fold, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, teams healthy. Tyus Jones, Ryan Dunn, healthy. Everybody that you would count on in a playoff series is available. So what do I want to see today? I want to see a team that for 4 quarters can go blow for blow, can match the intensity, can match the energy, can match the physicality, the athleticism, whatever the Cavs are going to bring to the table today. I want the Phoenix Suns to match them blow for 4 quarters. It doesn't have to end in a win. But I don't want to come in here tomorrow and talk about a team that was a no-show against the Cavs. I don't want to talk about a team that was non-competitive against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't want to have that conversation tomorrow. There's a reason why you need to watch the video version of the show is because when that part of the clip played, where I said I don't want to come in here today, tomorrow, to talk about a no-show, producer Dylan and I looked at each other and we shared a laugh. We forecasted this yesterday. The one thing you couldn't do was what you did yesterday. No-show, non-competitive. I'll give you the numbers, although you don't need them. Just find the nearest trash can, throw them in there. But you get outscored 32-19 in the second quarter. You get outscored 34-24 in the third quarter. It's over. The game is over. The middle quarters, you were non-competitive. How about this for the second quarter where the game completely went off the rails? Grayson Allen a -12, Bradley Beal a -15, Royce O'Neal a -10. That's your bench. That's supposed to be the group that comes in and helps kind of just level, set, and keep everything where it's supposed to be. Bradley Beal coming off the bench is supposed to provide you that scoring, supposed to keep you in it. A -12, a -15, and a -10 is what you got off the bench in just the second quarter from Grayson Allen, Bradley Beal, and Royce O'Neal. And a team yesterday that had Kevin Durant, that had Devin Booker, and had Bradley Beal, they didn't belong on the same floor with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that Cavs team had injuries all over the place. And the Suns didn't belong on the floor with them. Yesterday, you saw what championship level looks like in the NBA. I don't know if the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to win the Eastern Conference. I don't know if they're going to dethrone the Boston Celtics. They're certainly playing the better basketball right now. They're certainly going all out to be the number 1 seed, but we know it's the NBA. You get to the playoffs, and those teams that kind of coast because they know they can coast, like Boston, turns it on in the playoffs. So I don't know if Cleveland is for real, but I'll tell you what, they're a good basketball team. You wouldn't be shocked if they made it to the NBA Finals. You wouldn't be shocked if they won the Eastern Conference with the way that they've played, with the talent that they have, and you didn't belong on the floor with them. You played yesterday the top team in the East. You played a championship contender. It would be like the Cardinals playing the Chiefs or the Bills or the Commanders or the Eagles. It would be like the Diamondbacks playing the Dodgers or the Yankees. It would be like that. So ask yourself this question, because this is going to set the table for everything that we discuss here today. I saw the story in The Athletic early this morning. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Bradley Beal, his shoelaces, his trade interests. I've got the cut about Jimmy Butler only wanting to go to Phoenix. Trust me, we've got 2 hours. Get comfortable, everybody. We're going to talk about this team a lot today. So I've got you ready. But to set the table, to give you the menu for the entire show, ask yourself this question today and look at every other conversation that we're going to have about Bradley Beal, about Jimmy Butler, about the second half of the season, everything that we discussed today about the Phoenix Suns. I want you to look at it through this lens. The Suns played yesterday a championship caliber, championship contender team. That was championship level from the Cavs. Ask yourself this question. Are the Cardinals closer to the Kansas City Chiefs than the Suns were yesterday to the Cavaliers? Are the Diamondbacks closer to the Dodgers than the Suns were yesterday to the Cleveland Cavaliers? The point I'm making here is they're not even close to championship level. They're not even in the same zip code of championship level. The Diamondbacks, they were in the same zip code. World Series 2 years ago. Almost a 90-win team, spending big money in free agency. They're in the same zip code. Now, they don't have as big of a house as the Dodgers, but they're in the same zip code. They're around the block. The Suns aren't even in the same zip code. And so if we are going to spend the day talking about Jimmy Butler again, and we will, if we're going to spend the day talking about Bradley Beal's no-trade clause, and we will, ask yourself this. What's it going to take for this team to get to championship level? And is it something that they can do in the next couple of weeks? You and I both know the answer to that question. You and I both know if you look at every other team here in town and you compare them to the championship class, and you look at where the Suns are in respect to the championship class in the NBA, they're not even close. You can't even begin to have a conversation about championship level for the Phoenix Suns. And so making the playoffs is going to be like a participation trophy. It's going to be a consolation prize. Who cares? Who cares if the Phoenix Suns, with the highest payroll in the sport, who cares if the Phoenix Suns not controlling a single asset of their own until 2031? Who cares if they make the playoffs? Who cares if they play in a first-round matchup? Who cares? This team is supposed to be able to play with the Cavs, who, by the way, had injuries yesterday, weren't playing their full complement of players. They still beat you by 20. 26. You're 42 games into the season. You're 21-21. And over and over and over again, you give us performances like that. I'd argue this is worse than the Memphis loss. The Memphis loss is the one that I just circle. And I've got the calendar in my office of all the Suns game, and I circle the ones that I want to make sure we never forget. This one's getting circled. Because what did I say yesterday? And I'm not some oracle. I just said, can you do me one thing? Could you not do this? Could you not let us have the show be this today? Just be competitive. You had everybody. You look up and down the roster for the Phoenix Suns. I have the box score in front of me. Devin Booker played. Kevin Durant played. Tyus Jones, Nick Richards, Ryan Dunn. That would be your starting five in a playoff series. Your bench, your rotation. What would it be? It would be Grayson Allen. It would be Bradley Beal. It would be Royce O'Neal. Everybody that would be in a playoff rotation. When you play Memphis and Houston and Dallas and the Clippers and Oklahoma City, name anybody in the Western Conference, that would be your group. And that group couldn't beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I'm not sure people are all the way bought in on yet, but clearly the class of the East right now. You couldn't be competitive with that team. Couldn't do it. You know championship level when you see it. You saw it yesterday from the Cleveland Cavaliers. You see it when you watch the Kansas City Chiefs or the Los Angeles Dodgers. You know championship level when you see it. You don't need statistics to back it up. You look at a team's record, you see the way that they play, you see the way that they handle games like yesterday, and you know top-tier elite teams when you lay eyes on them. Yesterday, you saw that from the Cleveland Cavaliers because they just took full advantage of who the Phoenix Suns are. And you know what the Phoenix Suns are? A broken mess. A broken mess. This is what they are. 42 games into the season, this is what has been presented to you. And I'll tell you in hour number 2 of the program, it's not getting any easier, folks. If you thought there's still time, I might convince you there's not time. I might convince you that the hourglass is running out of beads of sand. Just an absolute disgrace yesterday from this basketball team. I didn't need a win. I played the clip for a reason because I wanted everybody to know who maybe missed the show yesterday to know we were on record. You didn't need to win the basketball game yesterday. But the thing you couldn't do was that. Was that trash outing that immediately ruins everything that you've done. You're 6-3 since you've moved Bradley Beal to the bench. And what did we say the whole time? Well, look at the opponents. Hasn't really been against high-quality opposition. Let's see what happens when they... Okay, we saw what happened yesterday. You don't belong. You don't belong on the same floor as the Cleveland Cavaliers. You aren't championship level. So now, let's unpack that. Let's double-click into that statement. Let's try to figure out where we go from here. And, well, it's a day that ends in Y, so let's do this conversation again. And Suns fans, I need to hear from you today. I need to know where you're at. I need to know what you're feeling today after watching that garbage yesterday. 480-864-1060 is the phone number if you want to hop into the show today and join the conversation. But on the other side, it's a day that ends in Y, so we're going to do the conversation here yet again. Because Jimmy Butler back in the news. Phoenix and Jimmy Butler back in the news. And potentially, could Bradley Beal actually want out? That's next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Make sure you also download the KDUS AM 1060 app. You can take the station with you on the go. You can take this show with you on the go. Wherever you are, KDUS 1060, right there with you. Download the KDUS AM 1060 app today. I took a nice deep breath in the commercial break because we're full steam ahead here today on this program with the Phoenix Suns. Because yesterday was a disgrace, a disappointment, a disaster, a travesty, garbage, whatever word you want to use. That's what yesterday was for the Phoenix Suns, to have that type of performance at a crossroads in their season. And I had a whole big plan of what we were going to talk about, and then there's a nice athletic story that dropped. And I had to print it out. There's so many quotes in here that I wanted to discuss. So we printed out the story. We've got the trusty highlighter out. We've got passages that we're going to read to you. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. And I'll start this way. This is how I'll set the table. Here's what the title of the story today in The Athletic was from Fred Katz. Suns at a crossroads, stalled hopes, Jimmy Butler interest, and Bradley Beal's no trade clause. And it is a lengthy story that goes through everything. The problems that are plaguing the Phoenix Suns, how we got here, the decision to bench Bradley Beal and Yusuf Nurkic, the conversations with the team, where they're at with Jimmy Butler, where they're at with Bradley Beal, you name it, it is in this story. And so highly recommend seeking out this story and reading the whole thing. When a story starts, like this one does, talking about Bradley Beal and his shoelaces, and how much time he spends tying his shoelaces, and it becoming its own viral social media thing, you know your season is in the toilet. We're not doing this in Cleveland today. We're not doing this in Boston today. Dallas isn't doing this. New York isn't doing this. Nobody else is doing shoelaces today, okay? There was no early morning production meeting with a producer and talent that said, you know what we're going to lead with today? Shoelaces. But guess where we are today, 11:20 on a Tuesday? Shoelaces. Let me just check real quick. Mine are good. I'm not going to have to interrupt this segment to tie my shoelaces the way Bradley Beal interrupts the offensive flow for the Phoenix Suns to tie his. And that's how this story starts. And that's where we'll start, because this passage is everything you need to know about the turmoil inside that building. Phoenix staffers had noticed a trend already, that in the middle of a possession, Beal would bend down to retie his shoes as the other 9 players continued. They didn't know why, they just realized it was happening, and some detected that in moments, it had burned the squad. I mean, we got shoelaces impacting our ability to compete on the basketball floor? Can somebody figure that out? And you've got people in the building saying that we don't understand why he's doing it. We don't understand what's going on, but I'm here to tell you it's not working out for us. So that's where we start this segment. That's where we start this conversation about the Phoenix Suns. That this story in The Athletic that goes through everything. It goes through the meeting that Coach Bud had with the team after benching Nurkic and Beal. And it talks about Beal's no trade clause. Trust me, we're going to get to all of it. But I couldn't help but notice that we started with shoelaces. That's a conversation I have with my 10-year-old about tying shoes. I don't have that conversation with a basketball player that's making $50+ million a season. Yet that's where the 2024-2025 Phoenix Suns sit. That's where we're at today. And there's a video clip, which this is a reason why you go see this story. They explain to you what you're going to see, and then you watch it. And you just watch Bradley Beal tie his shoes against Indiana, and you watch Bud just throw his hands in the air, and it just defeated. Because what are we doing? So that's where this starts. And it was after that moment that he was benched. Now, they're not related. At least I don't think they're related. But here is an important passage, and we're telling this in chronological order because you have to know how we got here. You have to know how we got to this spot on January 21st, where I'm as red hot as I am today. I don't want to do this. Can we talk about Cardinals free agency? Can we talk about a baseball move or something? I don't want to do this today. Here we are, though. Budenholzer met with the team after the benching of Nurkic and Beal and talked with the team about their issues. Quote, their big picture flaws were obvious to the outside onlooker. Health aside, they needed more size, better rebounding, and stronger point of attack defense. From the onset of the season, Beal was the guy tasked with guarding the other team's top perimeter player. He had struggled of late, especially once screens came into the action. Nurkic, they believed, had not been up to par manning the paint. So they knew what was going on. They knew the issues the team was having. And yet all of that, shoelace gate, a meeting with the team pointing out all the issues that everyone saw, that's not even the juicy part. The juicy part is tucked away on page 5 of this story. And it is the part that is tucked away that could doom the Suns for a decade. Because this story points out that the Suns are still making phone calls. They are still talking to teams about taking on Jusuf Nurkic and Bradley Beal. They are actively making phone calls. That's outgoing phone calls, not ingoing calls, not inbound. That's not calls coming to the Phoenix Suns. Those are calls that the Suns are placing outwards to other teams to try to trade Bradley Beal and Jusuf Nurkic. And yet, there's a little sentence in here that says Bradley Beal would consider waiving his no-trade clause if it was for the right destination. But he has not been asked by management. And he has not been asked by management where he might want to go. Because this story points out that, according to a source close to his thinking, he would waive it for the right situation. So if you're the Phoenix Suns, and this is true, and you're actively shopping Bradley Beal, and you're still pursuing Jimmy Butler, trust me, we're going to get to that here in a second. Wouldn't you go to Brad and say, hey, dude, which teams are you interested in so we don't call teams that maybe don't want to do this? We can work from a list of, they haven't even reportedly spoken to him about it yet. And here is the quote that dooms us all. Quote, he has told people close to him that if the Suns never ask him to waive the no-trade clause to facilitate a deal, then he won't propose it on his own. Why would you? You got $50 million. You get to live in Phoenix. You don't have a single problem in the world. But if the Phoenix Suns are still actively pursuing this, if the Phoenix Suns are still actively trying to trade for Jimmy Butler, if they're still actively trying to trade Bradley Beal, wouldn't you think it would be the smart thing to do to call the guy or bring the guy into a meeting room and say, hey, Brad, where would you like to go? Is there a city, a team, maybe other than Miami, because we know they're not interested? Is there a team that you would be interested in going in so at least we can work from a position of not wasting everybody's time, not wasting our time, not wasting your time, not wasting another team's time? It's just common sense. The Phoenix Suns don't want to get to the 50-yard line or into the red zone with an opposing team to just hear from Bradley Beal, you know what, I don't want to go there. Think about how much legwork it takes to swap names and trade physicals and get to a place where you're able to facilitate a deal only for Bradley Beal to go, I don't want to go there. So when you do that work ahead of time, and meanwhile, lurking in the shadows, in the bushes, just waiting, is Jimmy Butler.
I can't emphasize this enough as somebody who with Shams Charania has been on this story for months now. Jimmy's number one focus is getting traded, preferably to the Phoenix Suns. Everything else is secondary. Not getting traded to Team X, not getting traded to Team Y, getting traded to the Phoenix Suns. And so anything that you want to bring that's rational, if it doesn't mean getting traded to the Suns, Jimmy is not going to be interested in it right now. That's one thing you got to remember out of all of that. And that is the way he is operating.
Hop on board, everybody. The roller coaster's going around again. We're taking this ride one more time. Because there is nothing about the way Jimmy Butler is acting, as evident by that clip. By the way, shout out to the Hoop Collective. Man, that podcast getting a lot of pub here on this show. We play a lot of Brian Windhorst from the Hoop Collective. From Jimmy Butler's perspective, he's still all in on Phoenix. And I'm here to tell you, do you feel deep down that the Phoenix Suns have given up on their dream of Jimmy Butler? Because everything keeps pointing them back towards Jimmy Butler. Everything keeps pointing them back towards making this trade. Back towards pushing their chips further and further into the middle. And we told you what a mistake that would be. You'd set the franchise back a decade. Remember what we said at the top of the show. Championship level. Are the Phoenix Suns a Jimmy Butler away from reaching championship level? I'll tell you in hour number 2 of the program why you shouldn't think that. Did you watch yesterday and think to yourself, the only thing this team is missing is Jimmy Butler? Is that what you thought yesterday? Is that truthfully what doomed the Phoenix Suns yesterday? That they didn't have Jimmy Butler? And so in order to salvage this season, they're going to continue to mortgage their future, set them back probably a decade, even more so than they already are set back, to see this through. Where instead, you can just see it through now. You can try to make the tweaks. And the story points out that they've gotten some bad luck. Teams are shooting relatively well against them, and that should kind of even out here at some point with the way that they're playing, because they're playing the way a Coach Budenholzer defense tends to want to play. And so there's some luck that might go their way here in a little bit. And so maybe some bounces go their way. And so maybe there's some change that happens just artificially over the course of the entire season. But the takeaway from this story is that Bradley Beal is at least willing to waive his no-trade clause if the situation is right. But he reportedly has not been asked to do so. They haven't even approached him about it. That feels weird for a team that is flirting as much with Jimmy Butler as this team is. There is no rebuttal of it. They continue to be the only team that's mentioned. On Jimmy's side, on a team side, it always comes back to the Phoenix Suns. That should tell you everything about where this stands. The Suns aren't ending this rumor because I don't think they want this rumor to end. And so around the roller coaster we go again. And guess what? Just like a roller coaster, when you hop back on the ride, it starts at the same place every time. And so we start at the same place every time, and that is Bradley Beal and his no-trade clause. So we can keep going through the ups and downs and playing different clips, and this is what Jimmy Butler wants, and then we could guess what? The ride starts at the same spot every time. And so far for the Phoenix Suns, they haven't gotten into the cart yet on the roller coaster. They're just kind of watching. They're not really approaching Jimmy Butler about his no-trade clause. Or Bradley Beal about his no-trade clause. Excuse me. So around the roller coaster, we all go again. I need a Suns break. Hope that's okay with all of you. 480-864-1060. Unless you want to hop in. If you want to hop in, you want to take over the show, you want to veer us in a different direction, you want to continue talking Suns, that's fine with me. 480-864-1060 is the phone number. But personally, I would like to take just a quick breather from the Phoenix Suns talk. Could not one, but two NFC East defensive players, including one that's playing this weekend, be on their way to help fix this Cardinals defense? It's next on the lunch break. KDUS, AM 1060. Welcome back in the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Also on the KDUS AM 1060 app and on the YouTube stream, KDUS AM 1060 on YouTube. Appreciate you being here on this Tuesday edition of the show. I need a quick timeout from the basketball because we've got a lot of it here on the show today. And we're going to get into some football. And I think it was a few weeks ago, maybe it was last week on the show, we talked about a story in ESPN that was an off-season guide, an off-season preview for all the teams, and they focused mainly on the teams that were out of the playoffs. And we talked to you about Kaiser White, and we talked to you about the kicker situation for the Cardinals and what their biggest off-season priority was and compared it to what we thought the biggest off-season priority was. Well, there's a new piece to that puzzle in that story, and it talked about a big prediction for the offseason. And that big prediction for the Arizona Cardinals was a pair of NFC East defenders joining this squad. And I'm not going to explore the validity of the specific players and whether or not they'll be here, but it's the methodology. It's the process that I'm incredibly interested in. And this prediction saw the Cardinals adding the Eagles' Josh Sweat, Eagles playing in the NFC Championship game this weekend, and Osa Odigizua, who plays for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Josh Sweat, you may be familiar with, edge, outside pass rusher, exactly what the Cardinals need, part of the 5 pillars, right? And then you have Osa Odigizua, who's an interior D tackle for the Cowboys, who's going to become a free agent. So that helps beef up that interior. And the thing I like about both of these players is they are a blend of short and long term, right? Josh Sweat is 27 years old. He just turned, he's 27. He's going to turn 28 here in a couple of months. Osa Odigizua is 26. He'll turn 27 before the season begins. So you're not getting players who are 32, 33, 34 years old. You're not getting veteran players who are signing one-year deals and maybe are on the back 9 of their career. You're getting players who theoretically are still in their prime. Players who theoretically their best years could still be in front of them, and you can get a couple of those years. And to fill the interior of the defensive line and to get an edge rusher, we know how important the defensive line is for the Arizona Cardinals. And we have talked about the 5 pillars, and we have talked about how important edge is to those pillars. And so where I come down on this is, I don't know if Josh Sweat's going to come here. I don't know if Osa Odigizua is going to come here. I don't know if those players exactly are going to be the players that end up with the Arizona Cardinals. I get the Eagles link, Josh Sweat there in Philadelphia. That's where Jonathan Gannon was. You can make all the connections in the world. Osa Odigizua, a player that played in the NFC East, so Gannon might be familiar with. I get it. I understand the reason why you would make that leap, and at this time of year, when you're making these free agency predictions, it's nice to have something to bet on instead of just throwing darts at a dartboard. It's nice to say, well, this coach used to be there, right? I'm here to tell you, the Lions, any free agents they have are obviously going to be linked to now Ben Johnson with the Bears and wherever Aaron Glenn ends up, right? It's easy to make those connections. So I get it. So I don't know if those players are going to be here. But what I like about the prediction is it shows a proper methodology. And that methodology is the Cardinals don't need to be in the business of signing players who are 33, 34, 35 years old. They don't need to be in the business of signing veteran, has-been players, retreads that might be on the back 9 of their career, and you don't know exactly when their production is going to completely fall off the cliff. That's not the business. That's not the market the Arizona Cardinals want to find themselves in this offseason. The Cardinals want to find themselves in the market, in the business of signing players who have a lot of their future in front of them and already have a decent sample size of production. They want ready-made, impactful NFL players. Now, I'm of the belief they need to go big game hunting. They need to go for the big fish. They need to swing for the Max Crosby. They need to swing for the Myles Garrett, the Jeffrey Simmons. They need to make those swings. They need to try to land a big fish. Micah Parsons, if for whatever reason he becomes available. I still think that should be the top lens that the Cardinals look through. But you don't know if those players are going to be available. You don't know if the price tag is going to match up. You don't know that. You do know what you're able to do in free agency. You put a contract in front of somebody, they like that contract, they sign with you. There's no working out compensation with another team. There's no deal. There's none of that. And so it's easier to address your needs in free agency. It's easier to address your needs in the draft. It's easier to accomplish the goals there than it would be to accomplish those goals via a trade. So we need to be realistic. We can talk about swinging for Max Crosby, swinging for Micah Parsons. Those are noble goals, and we should not ignore them as noble goals. We should not just immediately brush them aside. That should still be the prism that we look through, but we need to understand the hurdles that come with that, the complications. Now, listen, we see trades all the time in sports. It's not easy to pull off a trade. For every trade that you see actually go through, there's like 10 to 15 that don't. There's like 10 to 15 that just fall through the cracks, or one side can't get over the finish line, right? So for every trade that you see, there's a bunch that don't happen. And so it's not a foregone conclusion that the Cardinals will be able to address their needs in that regard. So here's why I like the idea of going with Josh Sweat and Osa Odigizua, or at least the idea of those players. Because you know what? It's a blend. It's a blend of what we talked about. We cannot get to night one of the NFL draft with the Cardinals having a hole on their defensive line at edge. We cannot get to night one of the NFL draft wondering where the sack production is going to come from, where the pressure is going to come from for this defense. We can't get to draft night and have that conversation. So you sign a guy like a Josh Sweat. Is it a household name? Is it a marquee name? Is it breaking ESPN news? Oh my gosh, Myles Garrett got traded where? Oh my gosh, Jeffrey Simmons is going where? No. It's not a move of that magnitude, but it is a move that helps them with a player that has production. I think he had 8 sacks this past regular season for the Eagles. He's familiar with the defense. He would get up to speed relatively quickly, and that's what the team needs. They need somebody at that position that can hit the ground running. And then you also pair that player, because if you go the free agency route, you keep your draft picks. You pair that player with another edge with one of your first couple of picks. Now you have a well-rounded, deep edge group. And we've told you this. The Suns aren't just missing one bona fide edge player. They're missing a whole room. Now, you need to have one stud, and Josh Sweat would probably be that stud, while you hope for Darius Robinson or your other draft pick that you make to fill that void later on. But for the 5-pillar conversation, it would be Josh Sweat. I don't know what that does for everybody. I don't know if you feel the same way you feel about Marvin Harrison Jr. or Paris Johnson Jr. or Garrett Williams. I don't know if you feel the same way about Josh Sweat being the edge pillar as you do the other pillars, but it's at least a better group. It's at least a more well-rounded group. And so that's what I like about this. The Arizona Cardinals this offseason have to address their edge group through every means necessary. Let's trade for a guy. Let's sign somebody in free agency, and let's draft somebody. Let's use every tool in the toolbox to add to that edge room. The same thing, truthfully, with the interior offensive line. Let's sign a guy. Let's trade for a guy. Let's draft and develop a guy. Those are the two big needs for this team, the two lines, the trenches, where the games are won. And so I would use every means necessary that is available to me as a general manager to address that. I'm turning over every stone. I'm flipping over every rock. I'm making every phone call. The Phoenix Suns are not the Arizona Cardinals. See, I knew I was going to do it at some point. I knew I was going to get so angry in today's show at the top that I was going to sneak the Phoenix Suns in where they didn't belong. The Arizona Cardinals don't just need one edge rusher. They need multiple edge rushers. And so when you need a multiple of something, that means you have to look everywhere for it. And so why I like these two names in particular is because that checks the free agency box. It also keeps the trade box still open. It also keeps the draft box still open because the Phoenix Suns can't put all their eggs into one basket, into one player, into one avenue to solve this. They've got all the cap space in the world. They have their draft picks. They have the roster flexibility. Here is their moment. Here is the chance for Monty Ossenfort to show the world the Cardinals are serious. This is the chance for Monty Allenford to show the world that we are building off of an 8-win season. We are putting this team in a position to have a playoff expectation in 2025. So, Josh Sweat, Osa Odigizua, two players I like. Two players that I think make sense for the Arizona Cardinals. Does it have to be them? No. But the idea of what those players provide, young players still in their prime, at positions of need that probably won't cost a fortune, I like that approach. I like that approach to keep money available for other needs, to keep resources available if you want to make a trade or draft a player. I like that approach because this team is going to have to do it in a variety of different ways this offseason. They're going to have to look for all the different methods to address this position group. 480-864-1060 is the phone number. Coming up on the other side of the break, man, time flies when you're having fun. Hour number one of the program is almost in the books. So we will wrap up hour number one of the show. The Suns winning or losing might rest on the shoulders of one person in particular. And right now, with that one person, there's zero consistency. It's next in the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Back to wrap up hour number one of the lunch break. Appreciate you being here. Chris Schubert with you. We've got you up until 1 o'clock here today. Then you got Jim Rome from 1 to 4 here on KDUS AM 1060. That's right, the jungle here, KDUS AM 1060. That coming up at 1 o'clock. And in about 15 minutes from now, I will tell you why the road for the Phoenix Suns is about to get a lot harder. Yes. Even at 21-21, with how difficult it has been so far, it's about to get a lot worse. I'll explain that at the top of the hour to start hour number two. But I want to dive back into yesterday. And one very important thing about yesterday, and there's a lot, right? They were just a mess yesterday. Just a complete no-show. Just didn't bring it. We asked for them to bring it. 4 quarters, give us something. And they didn't bring it. And I found myself once again in the similar spot of looking at this team and looking at the box score and looking at what they're trying to do and having Bradley Beal come off the bench to try to open things up for Book and try to open things up for Durant and try to mix up who is paired with who to maybe mitigate some defensive lapses that they have with certain guys on the floor and to try to open space up offensively. I get it. It is clear to me what they are trying to do. They are trying to spread out where the scoring comes from. They're trying to make it easier for Devin to get into a rhythm. They're trying to make it easier for Bradley Beal, who is a high-volume guy, to be able to take those shots and it not come at the expense of one of the other members of the Big Three. I get it. It's clear as day what they are trying to accomplish. But you're taking a guy who hasn't been in this role for a really long time, and you are thrusting him into this role. And you might be able to get away with it when you play Atlanta, or when you play Charlotte, or when you play Washington, or when you play Brooklyn tomorrow night. But when you play against Cleveland, when you play against Houston, Oklahoma City, Dallas, Boston, the Knicks, the Timberwolves, you name it. Name a good team in either conference. When you play one of the top-tier teams in either of these conferences, Bradley Beal can't score 5 points off the bench. Bradley Beal has to bring it. The way this team is designed, the Big Three have to carry a majority of the scoring. They have to get into the 70s and the 80s. Producer Dylan, break out a calculator here for me, because I'm going to try to do this math, and I need you to back me up on this. Devin Booker with 15. Kevin Durant with 23. That's 38 if my math is correct. We'll add Bradley Beal's 5. That's 43 points. Yeah? So 43 points from the Big Three. You're not beating the Cavs. You're not beating Oklahoma City. You're not beating Houston. With those types of production values, you're not beating those teams. You're not beating the upper echelon. You're not doing it. And so this experiment of Bradley Beal to the bench, and we told you why they did it. We read to you from the Athletic story earlier today that the defense was lacking. They were struggling. That they needed a change. They needed to get him away from Tyus Jones because together they were brutal defensively. Separate them and take Beal's 30 minutes, although he played 25 yesterday, and just reallocate them. Have him on the floor at a different time. A defense that ranks 23rd in points allowed per possession. I understand what they're trying to do, but it comes at a cost. And unfortunately for this team, it can't come at the cost of your offense. Because even though you made this minor tweak to your defense, even though that you tried to change your defensive scheme, at least in your deployment of these players and who's on the floor with who to maybe try to help your defense a little bit, it's not making up what you're losing offensively by having Bradley Beal, who is a high-volume guy who needs to get into a rhythm. You're losing something on offense. We went through it. I don't have the book here. It's somewhere here in the building, my book of notes. But we told you what Bradley Beal had been doing off the bench, and we told you all over the place. 25, 12, 25, 10, 11, 15, 26, and now 5. Now, again, that game got out of hand yesterday, but it goes to show you the larger point that I'm trying to make is this experiment might work against the bad teams. It's not going to work against what we saw yesterday. It's not going to work against a team like Cleveland. Now, mind you, Cleveland had a bunch of injuries yesterday. Evan Mobley was out. Donovan Mitchell led the way with 33. He carried a group that was shorthanded. The Cavs were shorthanded, and it didn't even look like it. The Cavs, no problems yesterday against the Phoenix Suns. And so, yeah, tomorrow when they play Brooklyn, it can work. They can get away with it. Bradley Beal can only score 12 or 15, and they'll be okay. But against Cleveland, against these top-tier teams, it's not going to be good enough. So when we start a basketball game now for the Phoenix Suns, it all trickles down through the lens of what version of Bradley Beal offensively are we going to get tonight? And that is a scary place to be for this team. That is an inconsistent place to be for this team. Because just as easy as Bradley Beal can score 25, he can score 5 like he did yesterday. And just as easily as the team can look great against Charlotte, against Washington, can win a game against Detroit, they can look like they did yesterday. And so I know they're 6-3 since they made the change to Bradley Beal to the bench. And so you would look at me and say, Chris, it's working. Look at who they're beating. Look, 6-3, 6 of the last 9 games, they're making ground. And I would look at you and say, oh, yeah? They played Detroit. They played Charlotte. They played Atlanta. They played Washington. They're going to play Brooklyn tomorrow. So my sincerest apologies if I don't buy into beating Brooklyn or Washington. The best victory that they have. Think about this for a second. The 9 games that they have played since. Now, Bradley Beal missed some time during this stretch, but I'm going to give him the whole time. The 9 games that they've played since Bradley Beal has been moved to the bench, 6-3. The best victory that they've had of the 6 is the game on Saturday against Detroit. What are Detroit's odds to win the Eastern Conference? What are Detroit's odds to win the NBA championship? They can't be good. Nice team, having a great season, right? Turning things around. But it's not beating Cleveland. It's not beating Oklahoma City or Memphis or Houston or Boston or take your pick. It's Detroit. During the stretch, you lost to Charlotte. You lost to Atlanta. You beat Philadelphia, though. Good for you. And so forgive me if I'm not willing to fully buy into this nice little stretch that they've been on, because I think it's fraudulent. I don't think it's real. I don't think it's something to take stock in. They've looked good with Bradley Beal in the bench role against bad teams. Bradley Beal could not play at all. That's how they beat Detroit the other day. But when you try to play this way, when you try to square peg into round hole with this team and make this move and you play Cleveland, you're going to look a lot like you did yesterday. You're going to look a lot like you did against Dallas or Memphis, or take your pick of a good basketball team that this team's been embarrassed by this season. That's what it's going to look like. And so the rest of this season relies on one man, whether it's because he waives his no-trade clause and they trade for Jimmy Butler, or whether it's because he figures out his rhythm and the team figures out their rhythm with him in this role. But either way, the 2024-2025 Phoenix Suns season is going to come down to one person and one person only. And that is Bradley Beal. That's what the entire season has been reduced down to for the Phoenix Suns. That's why nobody has any belief. That's why everybody is trying to get off the sinking ship. That is why everybody is pointing to the Phoenix Suns to blow it up, to trade Kevin Durant, to trade Bradley Beal, to reset, to, as we have said on this show, push the big red button in the middle. Hit the reset switch. Because when your season is reduced down to Bradley Beal, in whatever fashion it comes down to, it's hard to believe that it's going to end well for the Phoenix Suns. It's hard to believe that whatever decision gets made here, or whatever outcome, whatever path this team goes down, it's not going to be the right one. It's not going to set this team up for success. And so when they play against Brooklyn tomorrow, I almost said Washington again. They've got Washington coming up when they get back here into Phoenix. So when they play Brooklyn tomorrow, it might work. Him being on the bench and only scoring 11, 12, 13 points, it might work. You saw yesterday. It doesn't work. Against championship caliber teams, it doesn't work. So one guy is going to determine how the rest of the season plays out. And it's not surprising to me that we use the term consistency for a basketball team that is now 21-21. The mere definition of inconsistent, of mediocre, of ups and downs. Some days it's great. Some days it's not. Some days it looks like a team that can win a championship, although that was saved for the early part of the season. And other times, like recently, it looks like what are we bothering to do? And so we are 42 games into the season. This team is 21-21. I don't know where we go from here. I do know where this show goes from here, and that is into hour number 2 of the program. We appreciate you being here. 480-864-1060 is the phone number. And I'm going to tell you at the top of hour number 2 why things are about to get a lot harder for the Phoenix Suns. We appreciate you being here. The lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. Welcome in hour number 2 of the lunch break. Appreciate you being here. Got you for one more hour. Then Jim Rome, 1 o'clock. Producer Dylan informed me in my ear during the break there. The Detroit Pistons plus 90,000 to win the NBA championship. I looked to see where it was at some other places, plus 60,000. So either way, a long shot for the Detroit Pistons, and that's the best win that the Suns have during this 6-3 stretch that they've been on since moving Bradley Beal to the bench. Now, I'm going to tell you why, on paper, it's about to get a lot harder for the Phoenix Suns. Because you think of everything that has happened to this team so far. The nice start to the year. Think just for a brief second, everybody. Just go with me on a journey to the beginning of the season and how well this team looked at the start of the year. And how we all thought the tales of redemption were going to turn out to be true. Now look at us. Now look at where we're at. The injuries that piled up, the inconsistent play that piled up, it was just a spiral downward for this team that has led them to today, where they are 21-21, 42 games into the season. They play again tomorrow. We are officially into the second half of the season for the Phoenix Suns. They've made a trade. They acquired Nick Richards. They're making moves. We are into the home stretch. I think you would say that this has been hard so far for the Phoenix Suns. Nothing has come easy for this team. I think being 21-21 is admirable considering how bad it has looked at times. They have fought tooth and nail to get to this point because it could be a lot worse. It could very easily be a lot worse. And I'm going to tell you that it's about to get harder. I don't want to say it's going to get worse, but it's going to get harder. One of my favorite websites, and Suns fans, you know it all too well. Love taking a peek at tankathon.com. Love just looking at a draft lottery or a draft order. Yeah, I just love it. Phoenix Suns right now, a lottery team, although they wouldn't get their pick. Their pick would go to Houston, but don't worry, lottery team right now. But you can look on Tankathon at the remaining strength of schedule the rest of the way. You can look at how difficult it's going to be for the Phoenix Suns. They have 40 games left on the docket here in 2024, 2025. And their strength of schedule, fourth hardest in the NBA. A 523 strength of schedule with 40 games left. The only teams that have a harder strength of schedule remaining than the Phoenix Suns are the Knicks, the Pelicans, and the Jazz. And let me just check something real quick. Just want to be sure. Utah and New Orleans, 3 and 4 in the draft order right now. So they're not really trying. They are embracing the fact that they have the hardest schedules the remainder of the way. Now, the Knicks are trying to win a championship there in the East. They don't love having that hard of a schedule, and we know the Suns certainly don't. The Suns still have 1 game remaining with the Cavs, 2 games remaining with the Thunder, 2 games with the Celtics, 3 with the Rockets, 3 with the Memphis Grizzlies, and 1 with the Knicks. That's who is described as the toughest opponents left for the Suns. They have 1 against Brooklyn as part of their easiest opponents. They'll take care of that here tomorrow night. They have a game against Washington. That's coming up here pretty soon. They've got 1 against Utah. And then they have 2 against Toronto, the Pelicans, and the Trailblazers. But a 523 winning percentage, strength of schedule, the rest of the way for the Phoenix Suns. And so you thought it was difficult now. You thought it was tough getting to 21-21. What about what you've seen recently tells you that that strength of schedule is going to end? Let's put it all out there, everybody. It's not where I thought we were going to go today, but we're here. We'll do it. With that strength of schedule and the way this team is played, and you know how they play in big games against good teams. You saw it yesterday, and they were fully healthy yesterday. Why should I think for a second that this team can make the playoffs? Why shouldn't I think that this team is going to do exactly what it has been doing the entire year? And that is hover around 500, some days be in the playoffs, most days be out of the playoffs, and it is going to be down to the final game of the season to determine whether or not they are in. What about what you have seen? Somebody, please, 480-864-1060. Give me something. Give me some reason to be positive today. What about what you have seen combined with the 4th hardest schedule of the remainder of the season tells you that this is going to turn itself around? Are you waiting for Jimmy Butler to ride in on the white horse to save the team? Are you waiting for all of a sudden Bradley Beal to figure out how to play off the bench? Is all of a sudden the defense going to get better for the Phoenix Suns? What is it? What's going to change? Because whatever you think is going to change requires a heavy lift. Jimmy Butler, that's a heavy lift. Bradley Beal figuring it out off the bench, heavy lift. There's consistency problems with this team. And they've got 40 games left. They've played 42. And we are more than halfway through the season. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And we're going to talk about this in about 15 minutes from now, because in one specific aspect, this team showed us who they were yesterday, and it's why I don't even want to entertain Jimmy Butler. I want to entertain going in a different direction. I'll explain that in about 10 minutes from now. But when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. The Phoenix Suns have told you through 42 games they are a mediocre basketball team. Through 42 games, they have told you they are not on a championship level. They have told you that they probably aren't worth making the Jimmy Butler trade for, because that's not what saves this. They have shown to you that this is a failed experiment. 42 games in of this season, the entirety of last year, they have shown to you what you should believe. If you don't choose to believe it at this point, I don't know what to tell you. But it's not getting any easier. It's not going to all of a sudden lighten up. And the Suns are going to have a nice pocket on their schedule where we're going to all go, oh, it's okay. Just get to this point at 500 and boom, off to the races. Fourth hardest schedule the rest of the way with 40 games to go. Fourth hardest schedule. You expect me to believe this team is going to look at the fourth hardest schedule and embrace it and all of a sudden figure it out? Why? What about what you've seen recently tells you that that should be the case? The team is broken. The team isn't working. On full display for everybody to see yesterday. For all of us to take note of. For stories to be written in The Athletic. And if you missed it in hour number one, there's a great story in The Athletic talking about the Phoenix Suns, and it starts with Bradley Beal and his shoelaces. What am I supposed to do with that? What are you supposed to do with that? Is a team that's going to make a run in the Western Conference playoff talking about shoelaces? And listen, I know it's the NBA, and so things get weird, and there's weird stories, but we're talking about shoelaces. And you want me to believe that that team, who had a story written about them, talking about shoelaces impacting their defense, shoelaces impacting their ability to get into their offensive rhythm, you expect me to believe that that team, with the fourth hardest schedule in the second half, is going to all of a sudden find it? It's too little, too late. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. You dug yourself too big of a hole. You can't get out of this. Now, it's a little different because the Suns are just built inherently flawed. They're built the wrong way. We told you that yesterday here on the show. Cheap plug for the podcast if you missed it. Yes, we did a show yesterday. We were here. Nobody else was here. Producer Dylan and I, the only people in the building yesterday, but it's the day after the division round of the playoffs. What are we supposed to do? We got to be here for you all. So if you missed anything, go to the podcast feed. Just search The Lunch Break wherever you get your podcasts, and both hours of the show are podcasted. But we told you this yesterday. The Pistons win showed you that the team was flawed. It showed you that the team can do it with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. You just needed a better supporting cast. So when you made the decision to trade all of the money on your books to acquire Bradley Beal, and you committed yourself to that contract with the no-trade clause for as long as you did, you sunk yourself. You dug this mess. You dug yourself into being a second apron team. And I saw a bunch of people on social media yesterday say, you don't know how the salary cap works if you're saying that the Phoenix Suns would be better served to use that $50 million elsewhere. They couldn't do that. It's because they traded for it. Yeah, okay. But that is some revisionist history, because you know what they did in order to take on Bradley Beal's money? They traded Chris Paul's money and the $28 million. So the argument that I'm making, and the argument that a lot of people are making, is you didn't have to make that move. You could have used the contracts and the picks and the assets that you had when you had way more flexibility, and you could have gotten more that you could have moved, the draft picks that you could have moved, and you could have made your team more well-rounded. So no, you couldn't have then taken that $50 million and spent it elsewhere, but you traded Chris Paul and a bunch of future first-round picks in order to get Bradley Beal. You don't think you could have sent Chris Paul and some future firsts to another team and got maybe one or two players that could have helped you, that would have cost less, that wouldn't have you in these financial situations that you find yourself in? 42 games in, 21-21, fourth hardest schedule the rest of the way. I don't want to be another oracle like I was yesterday, but I can see into the future. This doesn't end well. This does not end well. What about what you've seen so far tells you that this team is going to embrace the challenge of the fourth hardest schedule? They didn't embrace yesterday's challenge. They're going to all of a sudden embrace what the rest of this season has for them? I don't think so. Speaking of that, coming up on the other side of the break, we asked yesterday to see the character of this team. Well, they showed it to us. Now it's up to us to believe them. That is next on the lunch break. KDUS AM 1060. Welcome back in the lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. Appreciate you being here. Got you till the top of the hour, then Jim Rome will take over 1 to 4. Start your drive home with the Jim Rome Show. Yesterday we talked about this game against the Cavaliers for the Phoenix Suns being a chance for them to show us their character, to show us what they're made of. They showed you what they're made of yesterday. They showed you their character. We now need to believe them. We don't need to convince ourselves that what we saw is not true. We don't need to convince ourselves that, oh no, it'll be different next time. We need to believe them with what they showed us yesterday. Because what they showed you yesterday is a team that lacks a leader. We asked this question a couple of weeks ago on the show. Who's the leader going to be? Is it going to be the head coach that just got here? At that time, it was 30-something games into the season. Is it going to be Kevin Durant, who is on his, fourth or fifth team at this point? Is it going to be Devin Booker, who has been there forever and truthfully has never really stepped into that role? Is it going to be Bradley Beal, the guy that, I think this was around the time they just sent him to the bench, so 9 games ago, and now is reportedly potentially going to waive his no-trade clause to get out of here? Who is it going to be? The owner that's been there for 3 seasons? The GM? Where is the leadership coming from for this team? And that's what's missing. That's what's missing. This team does not have a leader. They don't have a North Star. They don't have somebody that can guide them when things get tough. They don't have somebody that can look around the room and say, we need to get our bleep together. We need to figure this out. They don't have that. This is not me taking shots at anybody's leadership style, right? Kevin Durant is who Kevin Durant is. You knew this when you signed up for it. If you traded for Kevin Durant expecting him to be the vocal leader, that's on you. That's on you as an organization. You were never getting that from Kevin Durant. You knew what you had in Devin Booker, and so you just tried to put a team together like this was NBA 2K. And you didn't consider the ramifications of not having a leader. Because guess what? Every team, I don't care who you are, you go through bumps. You go through stretches when things aren't working, where you start to doubt what you're doing. You no longer believe that you're going to turn things around. And that's where somebody has to look at everybody else and say, no, no, no. We still believe. This room is too talented. This room is too good. This room is going to turn this around. And this is just going to be a footnote. This is just going to be a chapter, 1 page in the story of our season. Who is that guy for the Phoenix Suns? Because if they had that guy, yesterday doesn't happen. I've told you for a long time now, this team is not a team. This team is a bunch of individuals playing basketball on the same floor together. And until they fix that, and until they play cohesive as a group, they are never turning this around. So this is why I am so against trading for Jimmy Butler. Because you know me, when I think of leadership, I think of Jimmy Butler. When I think of leadership, I think of the guy who's trying to force his way out of Miami and only wants to go one place. Why do you think he wants to come here? Why do you think this is the only place he wants to go? Because it's the one place where he probably feels he's going to go mostly unchecked. It's the one place where he probably feels he's going to get that contract extension that nobody else seems to want to give him. Certainly not getting it from Pat Riley. So Phoenix is the one team that is desperate enough to do it. And that is the environment that really breeds true leaders. That type of desperate environment. This is why I want no part of the Jimmy Butler business. This team doesn't have a leader. They are flawed. They are broken. I want out of this altogether. I want to trade Kevin Durant. Now, I know what I said when they made the trade for Nick Richards, that, okay, this is the path they chose. They want to see this through. And I can understand that. I can understand that thought process. And I have zero issue, as we sit here today, with them choosing to maybe not trade Kevin Durant now, but exploring it in the summer and seeing this through. I've got no issue with that. That is still in line with where I want this team to go. But the moment you trade for Jimmy Butler, the moment you bring him in, that means you are staying in the Kevin Durant business. You are going to sign Kevin Durant to a contract extension. And to me, that is a massive, massive mistake. Because you can trade out Bradley Beal for Jimmy Butler. You have not fixed your leadership void. You have not fixed the vacuum that exists for leadership. And you might be asking, Chris, why are you bringing up Jimmy Butler again? I thought we were done with this. Oh, really?
I can't emphasize this enough as somebody who with Shams Charania has been on this story for months now. Jimmy's number one focus is getting traded, preferably to the Phoenix Suns. Everything else is secondary. Not getting traded to Team X, not getting traded to Team Y, getting traded to the Phoenix Suns. And so anything that you want to bring that's rational, if it doesn't mean getting traded to the Suns, Jimmy is not going to be interested in it right now. That's one thing you got to remember out of all of that. And that is the way he is operating.
The Jimmy Butler story is not going away. Jimmy Butler is doing everything in his power to end up here in Phoenix on the Suns. And so I'm laying it out for you right now. If this team trades for Jimmy Butler, they are going to set themselves back a decade. Because trading for Jimmy Butler means an extension for Jimmy Butler. It means an extension for Kevin Durant, and it means continuing down this path. It means continuing to throw season after season away, chasing after something that isn't possible. A big three in today's NBA has way too many limitations. And forgive me for not thinking that when Kevin Durant is a year older and when Jimmy Butler is a year older, because this year is basically off the table at this point, that all of a sudden next year or the year after that or the year after that, they're going to be able to break through while Houston gets better, while Oklahoma City gets better, while all these other teams get better and the Suns are stuck with the three guys that they've associated themselves with, the three guys that they've chosen to build this around. You make this move, you commit yourself for the next decade. Because not only do you have the remainder of the deals, but you're going to pay the price long after those guys are retired. You're going to pay the price long after those guys are no longer members of the Phoenix Suns. And trading for Jimmy Butler, in my mind, fixes none of the major issues on this team. There isn't a talent problem with the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant, world class. Devin Booker, world class. Bradley Beal, superstar. There's a reason he got a max extension. There's a reason why he was the target for the Phoenix Suns, why they went out and acquired him. It's not a nobody. This team has talent. This is not a talent issue. It's a buy-in issue. It's a character issue. It's a leadership issue. And so if you're going to keep Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, then you are keeping all of the problems that are associated with those two guys. You are keeping all of the reasons why this team won't break through. So I'm imploring the Phoenix Suns to not make the same mistake, to not further go down this path. Yesterday was the example. Yesterday showed you. You can have all the talent in the world. You can put together a team like it's an NBA 2K franchise. But you don't have the right pieces together, if you don't have the right culture fit, if you don't have the right level of leadership and accountability and everything that goes into winning an NBA championship, you're doomed. There's nowhere for you to go. So don't quadruple down on this problem. Take yesterday as the warning sign that it was. Yeah, you'll beat Brooklyn tomorrow. Yeah, you might come home and beat Washington. You might do all those things. But big picture, 30,000-foot view, through the lens of trying to win a championship, not happening. Yesterday, the team showed you who they are yet again. Believe them. Believe them in what they showed you. 480-864-1060 is the phone number if you want to join the conversation here. Coming up on the other side, there's only 4 teams left. So how do I rank them going into Conference Championship Week? It is the Conference Championship Power Rankings. Who's most likely to win the Super Bowl? We will do that here on the other side. The lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. Welcome back in the lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. I'll tell you, was not a fan of the traffic this morning. It was nice yesterday, nobody being on the roads. I was able to get to work in an expedited fashion. I was able to get home in an expedited fashion. This morning, it was right back to the normal hour and 15 minutes to work this morning. Just for no reason, by the way. There's never an accident. There's never anything going on. Just people just not knowing how to drive. So more holidays, please. Just more days where people can stay home or work from home. Because Friday's normally like that. Friday's normally the day where I'm able to get to work pretty quickly. Because I guess for whatever reason, most places now, you don't work on Fridays or you work from home on Fridays. So the traffic a lot better this morning, not so much. So I'm already dreading the drive home. So I might try to sneak out here a little early today so that I don't have to sit in traffic. Because it normally takes me about 45 minutes to get home. And so in my head, I expect that. So anything that's above like an hour, and now I start to get a little annoyed. So My message today, more holidays, please. Can we celebrate more things to where people can stay home? Because we'll still come in and do a show, but I just need everybody else to stay home. Speaking of staying home, 4 teams that are not staying home, 4 teams whose seasons will continue and will play in the conference championship games this weekend, which allows us to do this. And I got to tell you, this music bed's pretty long. I'm going to try to use the entirety of the music bed to talk about just 4 teams. Normally, we get through 10 teams and we need multiple loops. So I'm going to see if we can really kind of expand on 4 teams. And so for those of you who might be new here, and we're gaining new listeners every single day here to the program. We're still relatively new, not even 4 months into the show. Every single week throughout the football season, we do power rankings. And since the postseason started, we have transitioned them through the lens of who do I think is most likely to win the Super Bowl? And it resets every single week. So we look through the lens at these 4 teams, and we'll start with number 4. And this is no surprise. You look at the 4 teams that are left, and there are 3 teams that before the season began, you would have said, these 4 teams belong. Or these 3 teams belong. These 3 teams could be hoisting up a Lombardi trophy. The preseason odds probably had these 3 teams towards the top. The one team that was not towards the top, the Washington Commanders. So they're at number 4. Look, it's been a great run. But they have limitations that other teams don't have, right? They have a coach. Now, Dan Quinn has been there, done that. He has lost the Super Bowl in the most gut-wrenching way of all time, blowing a huge lead. But this is his first year here with this squad. It's Jaden Daniels' rookie season in the NFL. It's Cliff Kingsbury's first year back in the NFL. And so you could look at this and say, they're naive, they're young, they don't know any better. The pressure doesn't get to them. Here's where you're wrong. That might be true in the first week of the postseason. That might have been true last week on the road in Detroit. But now, you're 1 win away from the Super Bowl. You can't ignore that. You feel the pressure. The pressure does get to you. You start to dream of going to the Super Bowl, to answering the media questions. You dream about 2 weeks of preparation to hoist up the Lombardi trophy. And you start thinking about that now. And so you can say all the right things. You can have the best practices. The pressure does get to you. And I'm just not sure if I can buy into the coaching staff, into a rookie quarterback, into this defense that hasn't been great all year long. I don't know if I can buy into now all of a sudden the pressure is not going to get to them. I think it does get to them. I think it does impact them. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win. They have a bunch of bright spots. They have a number 1 wide receiver. They have a defensive-minded head coach. And for a defense that maybe isn't great, he's going to be able to come up with a scheme. I said this yesterday, that if you were going to pick Washington to pull off the upset against Philadelphia, you're going to do so because you believe in Dan Quinn and you believe in his ability to come up with a game plan because he has seen the Eagles a bunch. Because before he was with Washington, he was the defensive coordinator in Dallas. And so he's not new to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's not new to Saquon Barkley. He's not new to Nick Sirianni. He's already seen the Philadelphia Eagles, this version of them, twice this season. He feels like, of all of the teams still left, the team best suited to take down the Philadelphia Eagles because he's familiar with them. He's seen them a bunch. So that's what you're buying into. You're buying into a coach's ability to come up with an awesome game plan and a rookie quarterback to handle the pressure. He's done it so far. But don't be surprised if the pressure does get to him a little bit. That doesn't change how good of a season he's had. It doesn't change what he's able to do moving forward. Pressure's real. It gets to all of us. So that's why the Washington Commanders are at number 4. At number 3, look, I know they finally covered at home, and I know they have Patrick Mahomes, and I know they have Andy Reid. I get all that, but the Kansas City Chiefs sit here at number 3 for me because I'm still not impressed. And they don't hand out the Super Bowl to the team that's most impressive. They hand out the Super Bowl to the team, the Lombardi Trophy. They hand it out to the team that wins throughout the postseason. I get that, and so it doesn't have to look pretty. It can, in fact, be ugly, and that's fine with Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes put up a stat line last week against Houston that looked like he was a rookie quarterback. I would have associated his stat line more with a Jaden Daniels stat line. Take it easy. Don't turn the ball over. Make the easy throws. Don't try to do too much. Let your defense, let everybody else carry us to the next round. That's what it looked like. And so it doesn't need to be impressive. But you're playing Buffalo. You might have to play Philadelphia or Washington. And I don't know. I'm just not that impressed right now. I look at Kansas City and I say, can you show me something? Now, if you beat Buffalo, who I told you last week, Buffalo, Baltimore, whoever wins that game, I have going to the Super Bowl and winning it. So, spoiler alert to who's number one. But if you beat that team, if you dethrone that team, I think at that point I'll take you seriously. And then the three-peat is real. But I'm just not there yet with this team. Even in conference championship week, I'm still not there with this team. At number 2, Philadelphia Eagles. I've told you over and over and over again, and I've been kind of calling my shot for about a month now, that I thought the noise surrounding this team would come back to bite them at some point. There's been a lot of drama. There's just been a lot of other extracurricular stuff that isn't football related, that isn't football associated. And yet every single week they take the field, and every single week Saquon Barkley has 2 or 3 big runs, and Jalen Hurts makes a couple of big plays, and the Philadelphia Eagles just keep winning football games. Now, I'll tell you, I didn't love the game plan from Philadelphia this past week. I don't think Jalen Hurts played his best game. I think Washington is very much in a position to pull off the upset. But I am here to tell you right now, unequivocally, I'm done talking about the drama when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. If it was going to doom them, it would have doomed them against Green Bay. It would have doomed them against LA last week. I don't think it's going to doom them. Now, their play might doom them, but I am going to take that off the table. I no longer think the drama is associated with this team. So if you're going to take the drama off the table, you've got Saquon Barkley. You've got a really good running game. You've got a quarterback who can make the 5 to 7 throws that you need to make in order to win. You've got a defense that gets pressure. 5 sacks of Matthew Stafford last weekend. You've got all the parts. I don't know if you have the coach, but you have a lot of the parts to win a championship. And so if I'm taking the drama off the table, if I'm saying it's now a non-factor, reading books on the sideline, non-factor here in the postseason, okay, then they're talented enough to win. And then the number 1 team for me, no surprise, the Buffalo Bills. I told you the winner of Buffalo-Houston would be the team that I had winning the AFC and winning the Super Bowl. And there's nothing about what I saw last week that's going to change that. They were up 21-10 at halftime. They dominated the Baltimore Ravens in the first half. Dominated them. Now the game got close. They almost gave it away. If Mark Andrews catches a 2-point conversion, they might still be playing. But Buffalo embraced the challenge. They embraced the adversity. They saw that there were a bunch of Pro Bowlers on the other side and they didn't have a Pro Bowler. They saw all that. They hear all the noise about Lamar being the MVP and Josh Allen not. They hear all the noise that Buffalo's not deserving of winning a Super Bowl, that they're not as good as Kansas City, they're not as good as Buffalo. They've heard all of that. Buffalo has heard every single thing that has been uttered about them. And yet, they dominated the first half of that game. They've been great all season. I've told you that I think this is the best version of Josh Allen we have seen. This is the best version of this offense. And so now, I put them at number 1, knowing that they have to do what they've never been able to do before. They have to slay the dragon. They have to go on the road to Kansas City and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what they need to do. Me putting them at number 1 tells you what I think they're going to be able to do. I've now told you what I think this team is capable of. So there you have it. The conference championship power rankings. Buffalo, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Washington 1 through 4. Right now, if I had to pick, I think it's Buffalo and Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. But any of the 4 teams that are still standing have a chance. I am not writing off the Washington Commanders. I'm not doing it. I think they can win. I think they have the recipe that you would ask for. They have the coach that you would ask for in this spot. I still think Philadelphia is more talented, but that is the way I see it going into conference championship week. Washington 4, Kansas City 3, Philadelphia 2, Buffalo 1. And tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but on Friday's show, we will make our picks, 2 of them. 2 picks that we will make for the Schubert 6 Conference Championship Edition. We'll make a pick in each game, and that I'm kind of telling you where I stand with who I think is going to represent these teams in the Super Bowl, or these conferences in the Super Bowl. But do I think they cover? We'll see where the numbers are at when we get to Friday's show when we make the selections. Coming up on the other side of the break, our most jam-packed edition of the Leftovers in a long time. There's a college football championship, another signing in baseball. The Bears hire a head coach. It's Baseball Hall of Fame Day. I mean, you've got all of that and more in today's edition of the Leftovers. We'll do it next. The lunch break, KDUS AM 1060. Back to wrap up this edition of the lunch break. Jim Rohn at the top of the hour. We've got you till then. And a jam-packed edition of the Leftovers. Ohio State yesterday won a national championship. Thought they were going to run away with it. Thought it was going to be a convincing, dominating victory for Ohio State. The game was close, but they won a national championship. Congrats to Ryan Day. Congrats to Ohio State. And I thought they were a runaway train after the first round of this college football playoff. If they were going to play that way, then they were going to be able to beat anybody, and you saw that in their pathway, in their roadmap to winning a college football championship. And now we start to see all of the stories for next year, the way too early top 25s. I saw one today on ESPN that had ASU at 14. I've seen the odds to win the college football championship next year. And I also saw that nobody who has been the preseason favorite to win the college football championship has won in like 7 years or so. Like 2017 is the last time that a team went into the year as the favorite and won the college football championship. And so we'll see what that looks like when we get to the beginning of the season. But ASU, I believe, finished 7th in the final rankings that came out, and in some way too early top 25s that I've seen, at 14th is where I saw them in one on ESPN. I think I've seen them as high as like 10 or 11 for some people. And so they're going to be a conversation. Defending Big 12 champs, Sam Levitt at quarterback, Kenny Dillingham. They've been attacking the portal. They've added some players. They've replaced Cam Scatteraboo with the running back out of Army. They have tried to overhaul that roster, improve that roster, and give it another shot next season in 2025. So a lot to look forward to next year in college football. But the 12-team playoff, a success in my book. I think this was a lot of fun. It was incredibly exciting to watch. I know the games maybe not necessarily were all competitive, close games, but that's not what you're going to get in the postseason. You're just not. Not every game is going to be an instant classic, but I think the 12-team playoff was more reflective of what college football should be about. So super excited about what the future of that holds. We had an NFL head coaching signing yesterday. Ben Johnson, going to be the new head coach in Chicago. Video out today of him being introduced to everybody in the building. They have landed him. So that is another team that has gotten a head coach, joining the Patriots and Mike Vrabel. So that leaves just the Jets, the Jags, the Saints, the Raiders, and the Cowboys all searching for their next head coach. The Raiders were interested in the Ben Johnson sweepstakes, although they were always viewed as a distant team behind the Bears in the pursuits of Ben Johnson. And so now they'll pivot. Aaron Glenn, meeting with the Jets today, is supposed to meet with the Saints tomorrow, although all reports are indicating that the Jets are going to do everything in their power to make sure that Aaron Glenn does not leave that building without signing a contract. So if he does leave the building, it will be as the new head coach of the New York Jets. So that's something to keep an eye on, as another team could cross their name off the list of searching for a head coach. And the Bears are pairing Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson in the hopes that the genius offensive mind there in Detroit, who got the most out of Jared Goff, who was able to get the most with Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams and everybody that they had there with that great offensive line, is going to be able to take that scheme, to take that play calling ability to Chicago and get the most out of Caleb Williams. Doesn't have the same supporting cast, doesn't have the same offensive line, so there is work to be done for the Chicago Bears, but their hope is that Ben Johnson can do for Caleb Williams what he did for Jared Goff, and Caleb Williams a lot more talented than Jared Goff is, so the hope is that the ceiling is limitless for what that team is going to be able to do. So that was announced yesterday. A couple of baseball stories here for you as we wrap up today's edition of The Lunch Break. Was it nice? Was yesterday nice? Were the last couple of days nice for everybody without the Dodgers signing somebody? Because they signed another player today. One of the top free agent relievers still available on the market, Kirby Yates, reportedly agreed to a deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers, joining Tanner Scott, joining Blake Trinan, joining Roki Sasaki, joining everybody that they've signed, Michael Conforto, everybody that they've signed just this offseason, but to go along with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto and everybody that they've signed recently. The Dodgers are building, to quote Star Wars, they're building a Death Star, right? They are an evil empire. They are the modern version of what the New York Yankees were for a lot of fan bases back in the day. They are just building a machine. They are building a juggernaut, and they've added another reliever. And their 40-man roster is full right now, so if they're going to get both Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates on the roster, they're going to have to make some type of move. I don't know what that's going to be. We'll see what that looks like. But the Dodgers keep adding. I thought Kirby Yates made a ton of sense for the Diamondbacks as a high-leverage reliever. There aren't a ton of guys left. Carlos Estevez, maybe the best reliever still left available on the free agent market. Maybe there's somebody available via a trade, but the big options are off the board. Jeff Hoffman went to Toronto. Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates went to the Dodgers. Aroldis Chapman signed with the Red Sox very early on in free agency. So there are not a lot of the top names for the relievers, at least the high-leverage relievers available. So if the Diamondbacks are going to strike, if they're going to add somebody to this bullpen, I don't know what's left. I don't know what options are left for this team. And today is, I don't want to call it one of my favorite days, but it is a day that I look forward to. It is a day that I enjoy. And that is because today is Baseball Hall of Fame Election Day. Because there's nothing to get you through the summer months of sports radio than debating Hall of Fame candidates and debating whether or not somebody is or is not a Hall of Famer. It's just a go-to in sports talk radio when you're running out of things to discuss. Well, today we're going to know who is going to be in the Hall of Fame. We're going to know if anybody is going to be enshrined. And it certainly does look like a bunch of guys are going to get in. It certainly looks like this is going to be the time for Billy Wagner to get in. Here is the entire ballot for you in case you have not been paying attention. Here's everybody who is available this go around, and this makes me feel old. Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Mark Burley, Carlos Gonzalez, Curtis Granderson, Felix Hernandez, Torrey Hunter, Adam Jones, Andrew Jones, Ian Kinsler, Russell Martin, Brian McCann, Dustin Pedroia, Andy Pettit, Hanley Ramirez, Manny Ramirez, Fernando Rodney, Alex Rodriguez, Francisco Rodriguez, Jimmy Rollins, CC Sabathia, Ichiro Suzuki, Troy Tulowitzki, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, Billy Wagner, David Wright, Ben Zobrist. Feel old yet? I remember watching all these players play. And so Ichiro, that's a lock. Hall of Famer. I think CeCe's going to get in. I think Billy Wagner gets in. I think those three get in. I think Carlos Beltran probably has to wait. I think there's a bunch of others that are going to have to wait. And then the idea here is you got to get 5% to stay on the ballot. That's the key. And so if it was me, I probably would. I shouldn't say probably. I know. I would have used all 10 spots. There are 10 deserving players on this list. There are 10 players that I believe are Hall of Famers. There's more than 10 that I believe are Hall of Famers on this list. And so we will learn tonight who will join everybody else that is enshrined into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we will know, like I said, I think Ichiro gets in. I think CeCe gets in. And I think Billy Wagner get in. I think those are the three locks. And nowadays, everybody kind of posts their ballot ahead of time, and there's people who track all this, and they're able to tell you where guys are at right now, what they're going to need on the remainder of the ballots in order to be able to get over 75%, and what guys are going to need to stay over 5% to be able to be on the ballot next year. And so there's a science to it, and there are certainly some people out there that look at their vote and they say, well, if I know this person's getting in, do I drop them off the ballot to get somebody on the ballot to get over that 5%? This is why I think you should be able to vote for as many people as you want to vote for. I don't think there should be an arbitrary 10-person limit. I think in a case like this, there are a lot of people that have relevant candidacies that are deserving of the time to let people look into them, and you would hate to see somebody fall off the ballot this year because they don't hit 5%, and their candidacy can never be revisited, at least by the writers. They would go to a veterans committee or one of the various other committees that put people in. So one of my favorite days, because I just love people arguing over it, it's my favorite sport, is baseball. And so I love getting in the weeds on the Baseball Hall of Fame debate because it is the one sport whose Hall of Fame generates conversation in the way that no other Hall of Fame does. You don't hear this type of conversation over the NFL, Pro Football Hall of Fame. You don't hear this over the Pro Hockey Hall of Fame. You don't hear this over the Basketball Hall of Fame. You just don't. Baseball this is both the good and the bad of baseball, right? This is kind of the gatekeeping of baseball that occurs that allows the Hall of Fame to be the institution that it is and to have the conversation that it does. But also, I'm a history buff, and I love the historic nature of what the Hall of Fame in baseball means. And so we will learn later on today or later on this evening who gets in to the Hall of Fame. Now, I'm just going to check real quick because it's one of those times where you just have to be checking up on Twitter at any given moment. As of this moment, Bradley Beal still a Phoenix Sun. Jimmy Butler still a member of the Miami Heat. And if you missed it, I will play this for you one more time. Why I'm bringing up Jimmy Butler's name once again. Why I'm bringing up Bradley Beal and his no-trade clause once again, because this is what Brian Windhorst said on the Hoop Collective podcast about Jimmy Butler.
I can't emphasize this enough as somebody who with Shams Charania has been on this story for months now. Jimmy's number one focus is getting traded, preferably to the Phoenix Suns. Everything else is secondary. Not getting traded to Team X, not getting traded to Team Y, getting traded to the Phoenix Suns. And so anything that you want to bring that's rational, if it doesn't mean getting traded to the Suns, Jimmy is not going to be interested in it right now. That's one thing you got to remember out of all of that. And that is the way he is operating.
Another trip around the sun, another ride on the roller coaster for the Phoenix Suns. After yesterday's game, we are right back here. Bradley Beal, in a report earlier today, is willing to move his no-trade clause if it is to the right situation. And so there's this athletic story that we referenced earlier in the show. There are reports that the Phoenix Suns are actively calling teams about Yusuf Nurkic and Bradley Beal to try to shed those guys off the roster, probably in an effort to bring Jimmy Butler here to Phoenix. And so if you missed anything from the show, we laid out the case of why we wouldn't be on board with that. So make sure you check out the podcast and the podcast feed. Just search The Lunch Break wherever you get your podcast. But after yesterday's game, I don't know how you can buy into this team making moves and trying to go for it. I don't know after seeing this team through 42 games that are 21-21, you can convince yourself that they should go for it. That you can convince yourself that this team that has the fourth hardest schedule the rest of the way out of everybody in the NBA is going to all of a sudden find it. And so we started the week talking about a nice win against the Pistons. We started the week talking about wanting to see this team compete for 4 quarters. Didn't need to win, but needed to compete for 4 quarters against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And what we got was a pile of garbage yesterday, directly into the trash bin. We spent today talking about shoelaces. We spent today talking about leadership. We spent today talking about Jimmy Butler and Bradley Beal once again. There are days I feel like no matter what, we find ourselves back in the same conversation. No matter what. Doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what the result in the game is. There is so much uncertainty around this team that until it gets cleared up, either because they make the move or because the trade deadline comes and goes and they don't do anything, that it's just a cloud that's hanging around this team. It's not going away anytime soon. And so we're just stuck in limbo. We're stuck in a holding pattern. We'll be back tomorrow. Break down even more about the Phoenix Suns and anything else that could happen. We appreciate you joining us. Producer Dylan, thanks to you for all that you do. Jim Rome, up next, top of the hour. We're back tomorrow. Everybody, make it a great rest of your Tuesday. Talk to you tomorrow. See ya.